The Galactic Assembly Hall on Viridia Prime was never designed for silence. Its towering crystal arches were meant to amplify the grand speeches of diplomats, the passionate debates of representatives from 1,000 worlds. But on this day, a heavy, anxious quiet had settled over the assembled delegates. They rustled their ceremonial robes, clicked their mandibles, and shifted on their hover cushions, all eyes fixed on the small, unassuming delegation from a planet called Earth. For the past century, since humanity's tumultuous entrance onto the galactic stage, this had been the ritual. A new crisis would emerge, a disputed mineral rights claim in the Verge, a misunderstanding about FTL lane priority, an accusation of illegal AI proliferation, and the Galactic Council would draft a treaty. It was a carefully worded, millennia-old dance of legal jargon and political compromise designed to maintain the status quo. And for a century, humanity had pushed back, argued, negotiated, and then, grudgingly, signed. They were the new, energetic, and slightly reckless members of the galactic community, but they played by the rules. Eventually. Today's treaty, the 847th draft concerning human activities, was a dense document titled the Accord for the Ethical and Ecological Management of Outer Territorial Zones. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic overreach, subtly but effectively designed to confine human expansion to their original solar system, citing unforeseen ecological impacts on indigenous xenoflora. In other words, the galaxy was feeling crowded, and the newest, fastest expanding species was making everyone nervous. Ambassador Aris Thorn. It's a man whose calm demeanor was a direct contrast to the frantic whispering of his aides, rose to his feet. He was tall, with the kind of face that looked like it had spent more time under a harsh sun than under the soft lights of a diplomatic chamber. He didn't carry a data slate with the treaty annotated. He held a single sheet of old-fashioned paper. The silence deepened. Even the ambient hum of the Assembly's life support systems seemed to hold its breath. "Esteemed delegates of the Galactic Council," Thorn began, his voice a low, clear rumble that carried to every corner of the hall. "On behalf of the people of Earth, the United Nations of Sol, and the Outer Colonies, I acknowledge receipt of the 847th Draft Treaty, the Accord for the Ethical and Ecological Management of Outer Territorial Zones." He paused, looking down at the paper in his hand. The lead delegate from the avian species of the Aviary Prime, Counselor Tavok, leaned forward, his feathers ruffling in anticipation. This was the moment. The preamble, the objection to Clause 7, the request for a 5-year review period. They knew the human rhythm by now. Thorn looked up. "We have read it, we have analyzed it, and our response is as follows." He carefully folded the paper in half. The crisp sound echoed in the hall. "We reject it." A murmur, like a sudden gust of wind through leaves, swept through the assembly. Tavok blinked his large golden eyes. The bulky, rock-like representative from the granite hegemony rumbled in confusion. This was not the script. They were supposed to propose amendments. Thorn continued, his voice unwavering. "Furthermore, we find the premise of this treaty, and the 846 that came before it, to be fundamentally flawed. Therefore, the human delegation rejects them all, retroactively." He placed the folded paper on his desk. "From this moment forward, humanity will no longer participate in this theater of containment. We will not be managed, we will not be confined, and we will certainly not apologize for our existence or our ambition." The hall erupted. It was not a polite, diplomatic eruption. It was a cacophony of shrieks, bellows, and electronic wails of outrage. Counselor Tavok shot to his feet, his wings half spread in agitation. "This is an act of war, a unilateral dissolution of galactic law. You cannot simply reject reality." Ambassador Thorn met his gaze, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Can't we? Yeah, watch us." He gathered his single sheet of paper and, without another glance at the screaming delegates, walked out of the assembly hall. His aides, stunned but proud, followed. The panic that ensued was not the panic of a galaxy preparing for war. It was a bureaucratic panic, a political panic, a panic born of a system that had just been told its rules no longer applied. The Xylosians, masters of finance, immediately projected the collapse of the interstellar credit market, which was heavily backed by human trade. The telepathy consortium, who thrived on mediating disputes, faced obsolescence. The military alliances, built on centuries of treaties that humanity had now nullified, began to fray at the edges. In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Council's channels burned with frantic messages. Emergency sessions were held. Sanctions were proposed, then withdrawn for fear of human retaliation. They sent mediators, historians, and even a renowned poet to appeal to humanity's sense of galactic unity. All were met with polite but firm refusal. Humanity wasn't building walls. They were simply refusing to live in the cage that had been built around them. Human ships, once required to file complex flight paths for approval, now moved with a new, unpredictable freedom. Human colony ships, previously stalled by environmental impact studies, were launched towards promising systems with nothing more than a cheerful "see you there" message. The old, comfortable order was shattering, not by force, but by a simple, terrifying act of defiance. The galaxy had spent a century trying to fit humanity into a pre-existing mold. They had failed to realize that humans weren't a puzzle piece to be slotted in. They were the hand that was now picking up the whole board and deciding to play a different game entirely. The first part of the game was over. The second part, the one where humanity set the rules, was just beginning. The Galactic Council, in a state of near hysteria, convened a special emergency session. The hall was even fuller than before, with military attachés and intelligence officers standing against the crystalline walls. The topic was singular. What do we do about Earth? The consensus was grim. The human economy was too interwoven with their own. The human military, though smaller, was terrifyingly innovative. A blockade of Sol was discussed and dismissed as impractical and suicidal. The idea of a preemptive strike was floated, and only to be met with the sobering reminder that humanity had already seeded dozens of self-sufficient colonies. Councillor Tuvok, looking frazzled and with several of his feathers distinctly out of place, called for order. "The situation is critical. Humanity has become a rogue state of unprecedented scale. Their rejection of all treaties leaves us with no legal framework to address their existence," a dry voice offered from a shadowed corner. All eyes turned to Ambassador Thorne, who was sitting in the human delegation's seat as if he had never left. He hadn't been invited. He had simply walked in. "You," Tuvok spat, "you have the audacity to return, to gloat?" "Not to gloat, Counselor," Thorne said, rising. "To propose a new treaty." The silence that followed was even more profound than the first. It was the silence of complete, utter disbelief. A delegate from a crustacean species snapped a claw in half. A molluscoid representative gurgled in shock. You reject every treaty we have, plunge the galaxy into chaos, and then you have the nerve to come here and propose a new one?" Tuvok stammered. Thorne nodded. "That's correct. You see, the old treaties were about containment. This one is about cooperation, on our terms." He activated a small holographic projector. A simple, elegant document appeared in the air above the central dais. It had only 3 clauses. Clause 1, Thorne read aloud. "Humanity recognizes the sovereignty and right to existence of all sentient species in the galaxy. We have no desire for conquest or subjugation." A flicker of relief passed through the hall. It was short-lived. Clause 2. "In return, all species recognize humanity's right to explore, settle, and utilize resources in any unclaimed or ungoverned region of space. Our drive to expand is not a disease to be managed, but an intrinsic part of who we are. We will not ask for permission to be human. The murmuring began again, but it was quieter, more thoughtful. The aviari, themselves an expansionist species in their distant past, seemed to understand. The rock-like granites, who valued strength and will, rumbled in grudging approval. Clause 3, Thorn continued, his voice dropping slightly, carrying a new weight. Humanity will share, freely, openly, our medical databases, our material sciences, our understanding of certain unique physical principles. We have held back, you see. We were afraid you'd use our gifts to build better cages. But if the cages are gone... He let the implication hang in the air. The prospect was intoxicating. Human medicine was already legendary, their ability to cure diseases that had ravaged other species for millennia, a closely guarded secret. Their material science was creating alloys that shouldn't exist, and their physics, no one even knew the full extent of it. "This is blackmail!" a Xylosian delegate shrieked. "You dangle carrots while holding a stick!" Thorn shook his head. "It's an offer, a fair one. You stop trying to put a leash on us and we stop treating you like jailers. We stop hoarding our toys and we all build a bigger sandbox together." He deactivated the hologram. "The old treaties were born of fear. Fear that we would be like every other aggressive species you'd encountered. You were wrong. We're not like you. Our strength isn't in our claws or our ships. It's in our ability to say no to a system that doesn't fit and to build a better one. It's in our stubborn, irrational, unyielding belief that the future is not something that happens to us, but something we build with our own two hands." He looked around the hall, meeting the gaze of each delegate in turn. "You spent a century trying to manage humanity. You failed. Now you have a choice. You can continue to panic, to build walls that we will only climb over or knock down. Or you can accept our proposal. You can stop trying to manage us and start working with us." For a long, breathless moment, the Galactic Assembly Hall was silent. The old guard, the ones who had built the cage, were speechless. But others, the younger species, the smaller traders, the scientific guilds, were leaning forward, their eyes bright with the possibilities Thorn had laid out. The offer was unprecedented. It was terrifying, and it was the most hopeful thing they had heard in centuries. Counselor Tavok looked at the document floating in the air. It was so simple, so audacious. It wasn't a treaty of laws and restrictions. It was a treaty of intent, an agreement to simply get along on humanity's terms. He thought of the Aviari's own ancient past, of the leap they had taken when they first left their home world, guided not by laws but by a shared dream. Slowly, deliberately, the lead delegate from the Aviari Prime rose. He walked to the central dais and pressed his feathery hand to the holographic document. A soft chime confirmed his species' acceptance. One by one, others followed. The Granite Hegemony, the trading guilds of the Zalosian frontier worlds, the scientific consortiums of the Talaxian Nebula. The old powers of the core worlds sat in stunned silence, watching their carefully constructed order dissolve and reform into something new, something they could not control. Ambassador Eris Thorn watched as the list of signatories grew. The panic was over. The fear was being replaced by a cautious, exhilarating hope. Humanity hadn't just rejected the old treaties. They had done something far more profound. They had proven that the greatest power in the universe wasn't the ability to enforce a rule, but the courage to imagine a world without the need for one. The galaxy was no longer panicking. It was, for the first time, truly listening, and the story was just beginning.